So as I say, thanks everyone for joining us, and obviously a massive thank you to Sehaam and Steph. This event is part of a small group that we organise in which we're trying to help inspire and really drive a diverse new generation of speakers in London. So we actually have a history of this within the LJC. A lot of the current keynote speakers around on the conference circuit gave their first presentations at our events. And so having seen the success that they've gone on to, we're trying to duplicate that and keep it coming. So it's all really about trying to find the hurdles that people face in getting started in speaking, and then do what we can to try and find strategies to deal with them. So far, we've got, I think, 34 new speakers this year to get started. And a few of those have now gone on to get conference gigs. We got Carly, I think I saw Carly. Yeah, yay. Good. So a few people that have gone on to do the conferences, and that's really what this is all about. So we run Q&As like today, just to help give our members a chance to ask questions to people that have been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, and everything in between. Today we're being joined by Sehaam Cyrene, who came recommended by one of our members who took Sehaam's 3-month coaching course for leaders who coach. Sehaam also hosts the Better Conversations podcast, which has been described as close as you'll get to eavesdropping on a private coaching conversation. So I'm a little bit nervous about, this is how to do better conversations, so I hope this goes okay. Steph is someone that has spoken several times to the LJC and always had great feedback. She speaks passionately about DevSecOps and cybersecurity, and has spoken at many conferences and meetups across Europe. As I say, any questions that you've got, feel free to pop them on the chat. I'm going to start by asking Sehaam a question that came up when we were talking earlier. So Sehaam, why start speaking? What thoughts do you have on why people should go on this horrendous, nerve-wracking journey and get off the mark?
Yeah, well, lots of brilliant reasons, Barry. It's if we step back a little bit and think about it in the context of our careers, it actually is a brilliant excuse to nurture really great relationships with people. And the one thing I've learned in my career is that pretty much everything hangs on the strength of your relationships. And so speaking actually, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more later about it, but it gives us a fantastic platform for nurturing those relationships if we craft the messaging in the right way that kind of lands with people. And it's a really smart strategic move as well in terms of your career. If you think about how many people are terrified of speaking, you can go into organizations, I hear it time and again, where people are drawn to the candidates who have done public speaking because no one in the company wants to do it. Potentially even, the C-suite, the CEO and so on doesn't want to do it. The heads of functions don't want to do it because they're terrified of it. So from an opportunity of a space that isn't heavy and competitive, it's a great place to establish your point of view, establish a platform, and become known as someone who can speak passionately about a topic or a technology.
Perfect, thanks, Sehaam. Steph, have you got anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, so I think, Sehaam covered it really well. For me, there's two perspectives. One, what's in it for you, which Sehaam described beautifully. And coming from technology, very, very male-dominated industry. I remember when I first started, I was like the one woman in a team of 16, and I was looking for women to aspire to be, like, mentors or role models, and there just weren't any. So you can speak for yourself and, have that growth in your career, but there's also the more, I don't know if, communism approaches, but if you're speaking for everyone else, the best way to improve diversity is about visibility and awareness. So if you're a woman speaker, then all of a sudden, well, for one, it's quite easy to get slots because, they want women speakers. But it also, for me, I learned that I had to be the role model I was looking for so that one day little baby me's could look up to me. So if you don't want to do it for your career, well, obviously that's a really good idea, but also think about just the impact that you can have on diversity in general, which for me, I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, it's so true. We see, because since we started this women's only group, we've been trying to encourage more people to get involved and to get on the circuit. And so after the events, I tend to write to people and invite people to speak or what we're doing. And every event that we have a female or woman speaker, there are more. There's like 3 or 4 times as many women that sign up. And so it's so true. It really is. It's it's been an interesting experience. So Ham, just coming back to something that you say there. I don't think I've heard this before. A great way to build and nurture relationships was where you started. Can you dig a bit deeper into that? Like, what?
Yeah. Well, look, so it's rather long, so I'll try and keep it as compact as possible, and feel free to ask any questions. But before I do, it would be helpful of those of you here, what I just want to understand is, have you done any speaking at all? Is this, where are you on that? If you could drop in the chat or even unmute, just let us know, because I'm trying to get a feel for what would be most relevant to share with you.
So for me, Barry's helped me out. I've done a couple of really small, like 5-minute lightning talks. So at the moment I'm trying to scale up a bit, as Barry also alluded to. I've got my first conference speaking engagement in September, which will great. I'm a little bit terrified about. Thank you. So it's about that kind of journey scaling up, and kind of the first big hurdle really for me. Cool.
Anyone else care to share? Oh, something in chat. Right, okay. You wanting to scale up from there. Is that similar for other people? Just a thumbs up? Yeah. Well, the thing about it being a strategic move and in nurturing your relationships is, if you're going to get on the speaking circuit, you need a really strong point of view. It doesn't have to be, and Barry, I've watched some of your previous sessions and the things that you've spoken about, and it's worth probably pointing out here. It doesn't have to be something brand new. It doesn't have to be a unique point of view, but just a really strong point of view. And underlying that would need to be some threads that keep reaffirming, keep endorsing and speaking into that sort of headline point of view that you've got. So whether that's stories or evidence or relationships or building alliances with people that's shown how you do something can be really quite different or rewarding if you collaborate in a certain way. So the point of view piece for me, and in terms of the work that I do with leaders, comes because there's 2 things. There's an imposter syndrome in a lot of women that feels like they want to talk about how great they are, but it feels like they're showboating. So having a point of view generally about value you bring to an organization gives you a way of talking about an aspect of technology, a process that you believe is really important and you're passionate about. And that can also be the thing that you go and talk about and educate people on and share your ideas about. And in doing that, I also recommend that people, that you reach out to your peers, your team members, whatever your point of view is, you test out your position, you get the feedback from people, and even when you're speaking, take the opportunity to test and experiment and sound out people's points of view. How are they reacting? How is that landing for them? And that's what I mean by it is a brilliant way of nurturing relationships along the way, because the more that you involve people in in that point of view. The more on board you can get them, the easier it is to get, those alliances when you're working day to day. But it also offers a point of view that you share externally, right? So I'm going to stop there. There's lots more I can say, but I'm sure Steph probably has some points of view. I saw her nodding.
Yeah, I think I can speak from my perspective. I'm working in cybersecurity, and I recently moved company as well. It was in December, and I started speaking in my last role. But when you start going on the circuit, it's the same names and faces, and usually they're quite influential people. So I, would either speak with or at, a lot of CISO events. So that's a Chief Information Security Officer, which is, I work for a software vendor. So those are the kind of people you want to meet. But it's really, really good for networking. Not only, the people you're speaking with, but the people that you interact with at the event. Someone I was emailing today about, I had to fill in a security questionnaire, and I recognized the name, and then I was like, I think I met you 3 years ago. And two of my current colleagues, they saw me speak about 1.5 years ago at like a Jenkins event. So it's really good for like your personal brand and getting out there and then building and nurturing these relationships, which of course is really good for your career and also good for general diversity as well.
So interesting. Thanks, guys. I quite like that bit that you said in the middle there about imposter syndrome is prevalent in a lot of women. I think it is in a lot of people, but I've heard a lot more about it from women than men. And as you say there, it feels like they want to talk about how great they are, but feels like they're showboating, which just seems to be like it's been really interesting running these events with women versus men, and just how different. Men can't wait to speak typically at the events, want to get involved, want to offer an opinion, even if they're just here to listen. They want to get involved, whereas the events that have been where we've had more women, it's been much more listen and take it in. I do want to move on from this point, but just on that, is there anything that you would recommend to, like, how do you, if you're sitting there trying to kind of be like, right, I need to get away, get sort of closer towards showboating, but get off that first step of be like, no, I have to be confident to talk about maybe not how great I am, but why I deserve a position to talk about this. Either of you have any thoughts on that?
Steph, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I was quite fortunate. My first speaking event, it was a meetup, but no one believed it was the real thing. That it was my first time. But the way that I always think about this, I was quite lucky early in my career. I did quite a niche role, and my manager and everyone's like, you are the expert. When you're speaking to customers or clients or wherever, you know this market. You do it day in, day out. They're coming to you for knowledge. So it's so when I think about that in speaking, I'm like, these people have given up some time, whether it's a lunchtime or an evening, to come to see me and talk about me. And even if I mess up words, everyone does it. If I totally forget what I'm talking about, no one knows, because I'm the only one who knows what I was meant to talk about. And one thing that I find is really helpful in virtual, so if you're starting off now, it's a great time. Sometimes when I have talks and I have to remember a lot of stats, I write them in a Google Doc. And I have it in my phone, so if this was my phone, and I put my phone next to my camera. So right now I'm looking at my water bottle, but I can kind of read it off. So in terms of the kind of confidence piece, I'm like, people are there to talk about me. I'm the expert. Even if I totally mess it up, no one knows. And at least for me, that's what really works.
Yeah, lots of things in there. Excuse me. I'm just going to take a drink. It doesn't help when you're recording lots of videos and your voice is going or speaking. So yeah, I agree with a lot of things that Steph said about imposter syndrome. There's I think the distinction, Barry, is you'll hear women talk about it was the team that did the work, and not taking credit as much as they should do. Because stuff wouldn't happen without their leadership. So nothing wrong with doing that, but it's gaining comfort. So how do you gain comfort with talking about yourself? And there's a couple of things. One is have a way of reminding yourself of all the brilliant things that you've done, because you've probably done a heck of a lot. And that, but we quickly forget that. And I've always said to any of my team members, keep a portfolio of every project you've done that you're proud of. And I worked in marketing, I worked in sports, I've worked in governance, and it's relevant the whole way through. So whatever industry you're in, it's really important to keep a record and have a way of reminding yourself. Not necessarily looking at your CV or having it there, but some things that you're really particularly proud of. And the second thing is learn to talk about them strategically. Because if you can tie the work that you've done or your achievements to the value it brought to the team, to the organization, or to the bottom line of the company, that's much easier to talk about, because it's easier to create a little bit of a distance from our own persona and say, you know, the approach that I took was this, and the impact that it had was X on the team or the customer. And that is a way of talking about yourself and the value that you bring that kind of allows us to sidestep that imposter syndrome and actually feel comfortable about it. It gives you a voice at the table when you're in meetings with your bosses and your peers to talk about. And it takes away that sort of, hey, I'm fantastic, I'm wonderful, which, you know, not all women are like that, but a large number certainly of my clients, and they've been senior VP and C-suite leaders who still struggle with that piece.
Just to add on to that, and you picked up on something, for the last about 3 or 4 years, I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I write down, like, on a quarterly basis, everything I do, whether it's like, oh, I spoke with this customer, closed this deal, did tech, I kind of try and aggregate it. But it's really helpful for when I need to speak to my manager, promotion, progression. Sorry, I've got a bit of background noise, bear with me, I'm just going to move.
It's such good advice. Do you know, I actually randomly have started doing this. I had a bit of feedback before, and because every single event you get nerves, right? Like, or at least I still do. I'm pretty sure most people do. And it does seem that it's the same for most people. So I've seen a few little bits of advice and I thought, yeah, I'm going to read that just before every event. And it has started just put me in a slightly better frame of mind and more positive and things. So yeah, even from lightning talks, from little talks you do, if you get any positive, just one-liners, ignore the 99% of the rest. But if you've got that one good line, that's the one you read. Yeah, no, I love it. Great advice. Okay. In fact, speaking about this, and Steph, I know this was something that you wanted to talk about, or you've got some thoughts about around nerves, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit. But when people first sign up to our group, we say, if you could ask mentors one question, what would it be? And typically it comes down to two things. And one is around, how do I choose a topic for what I'm going to talk about? And the other is around, how do I handle the nerves? Or how do I get over the nerves? Do you guys have any thoughts on that, on how to handle nerves?
Sehaam, I'll let you go first. I'm gonna have a little think.
Yes. One is, if there's a way of getting to know your audience before the event, do it. And if that means attending some of the previous speaking sessions that are open and public and so on, go and attend them. Get to know. Half of it is the worry that. Sorry, there's some background. Half of it is the worry that the people that are listening to you are going to be judging you, or that they're going to know more than you, and they're going to be saying, this is really basic, I don't know why she's up here talking. And so knowing your audience as much as possible, I think, is really helpful. And if you can't attend something beforehand, try and early on in your talk to actually engage conversationally with people. You noticed that I did that at the beginning. I wanted to ask and find out where you were at. And not only does that help me understand the audience, it gives my brain something to focus on. And that has an effect of helping me calm my nervous system. So physiologically, it's really important to give our brains a practical thing to do that, again, helps us sidestep those nerves. Preparation is also key. Don't underestimate knowing your material. Rehearse it as many times until you feel like, okay, I think I know the sort of flow and I know what I need to say. And that can be, you know, rarely is it once. I think, you know, multiple times. The more you do it, the more often you give the same talk, the easier it gets. I watched Margaret Heffernan at an event at the end of last year. And if you know Margaret Heffernan, she's a brilliant TED talk. She's been on multiple times. And I had this crazy opportunity to actually go and attend something. And I watched her sit at, it was a room of about, I don't know, 40, 50 people. I watched her sit at the back of the room while the MC was doing the introduction. And she sat there quietly in the dark with a piece of paper and a pen. Now she's a very experienced speaker, but she sat there and she was ostensibly making notes on maybe an A5 sheet of maybe some 5 or 7 points that she wanted to make to this audience. That was her prep, because she's experienced. And she's also someone who doesn't use slides. I invited her to speak at a summit. She was our keynote. And she said no slides, and doesn't like jargon, and wants to interact and have questions with people. So you do what works best, and it's a process of experimenting and finding, you know, are you more comfortable telling stories than reading to a presentation? And the last thing I'll say, because I've talked too much, is if you get 20% of your message out, fab. That, you know, in terms of what people take away and actually the lasting impression that you leave on people, maybe in, you know, 20% of your material. So cramming too much stuff into a presentation can give us nerves, and we rattle through really fast, and it's not an enjoyable experience for us, and probably not that fun for other people, because they're kind of going, just slow down, relax. That's all they're remembering. So that's my bit.
Yeah, thanks. I had some time to think, and especially with what you were saying, it was really interesting and very valid. One of my kind of top tricks in my last role, it was very, very technical, what I was talking about. So the audience was technical, the questions were technical, I wasn't very technical. So if you can, bring a friendly face. So I would bring my senior colleague, and it would get to the point that sometimes the audience, this was in the real world, like when we could meet, the audience would ask me questions, and I'd see him in the audience being like, oh. So at least I knew what to say and could kind of talk to it. And I'd almost go above and beyond. If you're terrified of public speaking, do internal speaking. Why not speak to your company? So I'm doing a lot of internal product training about like DevOps, what it is, the tools, the languages. So I train my sales team like once or twice a month. And so although I've done public speaking before, so I'm fine with it, that's a great opportunity to practice amongst all friendly faces, kind of calm the nerves a bit, and then you can start, you know, going out in the big bad world.
Yeah, that's great. I couldn't agree more. I think we had Denise Yu on before, who said exposure therapy. And it's very, I think from what you've both said there, practice amongst friendly faces is such a good way to start. There's so many things that you've got to get through to get into speaking, and that ability to practice with people, at least you can tick a few of those boxes along the way. And as you're saying there as well, so how that process of experimentation, it gives you a chance to play with things and see what works and be like, oh God, no, that was awful, I'm not going to do that one again. But find the way that works for you. We had a lady on, Canadian lady called Renee Safrata. I don't know if anyone's knows her, but she did a CTO event recently, and in terms of asking people to engage, because I worry about this, I'd love to start every event and be like, right, hi everyone, and start talking to people. I hate pitching at people. But I worry that if I ask people and nobody answers back, I'm just going to be sitting there for the rest of the event, nervous. And I've never seen anyone do it. She asked this team of CTOs, right? So we're not talking graduates. And she must have 5 times, she must have said, right, can you all turn your videos on, blah, 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 turn your videos on, please. Can you all turn your videos on? And she went and went and went until she dragged somebody out to get involved. And this I kind of like, it was interesting because I kind of want to, but I'd be so nervous too. So I mean, you mentioned that about asking people first. Have you got any thoughts on how to do it? Like, how do you ask people things? Do you just ask and wait until someone says anything, or any tips at all on how to do that?
Well, look, assuming you've planned your talk, right, and you sort of know the audience, but to make something really land and be relevant and to draw people in, as you were saying, Barry, into the discussion, you want to ask something relevant to a story you're about to tell, or a position or an experience. It's also a great way to kind of break the ice. There is also a bit of nervousness of people attending and putting their videos on, especially in this environment, right? So the nervousness sits on both sides. So if there's a way to break the ice and draw people in and have them share experiences, and also, I used a line for my presentation at the summit, which was, put your hand up if you've given yourself a lockdown haircut. My hand went up, and so it's silly, it feels inconsequential, but it's so important. And it's a bit like social chit chat. Some people kind of go, well, I can't be bothered with that, it just feels like a waste of time. It's not. It's really important to warm up the audience, warm up the person you're speaking with, because the more you do that, the more the oxytocin rises. And the phrase I use is, you want to raise the oxytocin in the room, because if that's raised, people are smiling, they're going to be generous in their interactions and respond to you. So don't underestimate and don't rush through that bit of connecting with your audience first, as a way of just, getting people comfortable. It can be mindless stuff about, your day, your dog, your weekend, COVID, whatever, anything that just is a part of you. And also sharing that little part of you gives people an insight into who you are. And the other thing that popped into my head is, if you make a mistake, just doesn't matter, you've got to find a way to laugh through it, joke about it. Well, that didn't land the way I wanted, okay, let's move on, and keep going, right? Because that shows a human side to you, and we all can relate with messing up or fluffing up our lines, or all of those things. So yeah, I think that's probably enough said.
So good to hear you both say that about the mistake thing, though. Just like Steph, you brought that up earlier, just to say it just doesn't matter, just keep going, just crack on. Half the time they won't know, and even if they do, who cares? Like, it's so good. I don't know if that is something you can get on your first talk, but to hear experienced speakers both tackle that and handle that, I think is really important. Guys, I've just seen we're approaching 1 as well. I did have a few more questions, but obviously I know I don't want to impinge. Have you got one more? The one thing I wanted to ask was about slides, tips around slides, and slide creation and that kind of thing. Have you got a few minutes to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. Steph, I know we've talked about this a little bit in your email as well.
So I do a lot of slides because I do, like I said, this tech training, and then I talk about different topics for work. I was fortunate, my first ever talk, I was given slides by marketing, so kind of, little baby bump. But for me, the first thing I do, like I'm doing a talk on SOC 2, which is about security certification. I literally type SOC 2 into Google Images and see what comes up. Or say I'm doing a talk about Java. I'll literally, instead of talking about Java, my slide will probably have Java with the little coffee mug. I'll just put the Java logo, because for me, slides are a visual aid. And to be fair, in terms of learning styles, I'm a very visual person. I'm not much of a reader, but the worst thing you want is for, to have all of your words and then people read off words. You can have maybe a few bullet points, 5 or 6 words on each, and then really expand on that. But the thing is, you, the speaker, are the star of the show. So I've taken it the next step. I don't even really have bullet points. I have actual pictures, and sometimes slides get busy. I'm a big fan of animation, so that you can load a lot of information. But for me, the biggest bugbear I have is when there's too much text, because I just either switch, as an audience member, I either switch off or I read it and then stop listening. And you are the person with the knowledge. You can never get all your knowledge on a slide. So I would say keep your slides kind of simple. If you can just use images, I appreciate you can't. And as well, as I mentioned, use the phone trick, especially in the virtual word, put the phone right there, and then I'm talking about, you know, oh yeah, this hack with this many la la la, and etc. And obviously it changes depending on your content. Sometimes you do have to have words and it is useful, but don't have, you know, it's the presentation, not a white paper. So that's the way I think of it, at least.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, look, I've seen all kinds of presentations. The best ones, I think, are the ones where I'm engaged emotionally in the story or whatever it is that's being presented. So don't be afraid to introduce an aspect that really connects, helps people connect emotionally with it. So which is why images are brilliant and really, really useful. They convey so much very quickly. Yes, no labored bullet points. They have their place, but if you're trying to connect with your audience and think about it as creating an emotional connection with the people who are listening to you. And if they have a sense of feeling inspired or motivated or overcoming a challenge, that is going to be something they'll remember. And it's the feeling that you'll leave them with. So yes, there's the technology piece or the information or the educational piece that you're trying to impart, but really dig into who you are and what's important to you as an individual and a person, and don't be afraid to let that come through as well, so that people have, it's like hooks, you know, ways of actually connecting with you. And yeah, you're the star of it. They're here to listen to you, and they want you to do a brilliant job, right? They want to hear what you have to say. So it's not like they've come and they've gone, oh, I'm just going to sit here and rubbish this person. They're not. They're here to learn, and they really want to connect with you. So that's a brilliant base. So, and use it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sehaam, Steph, thank you. I appreciate that so much. I'm sure the guys do on the call as well. It's just so interesting, and I think so useful for somebody just getting started and facing some of these challenges. I love that the first thing you do is just a Google image search. What a great starting point.
Memes are great for that. Like, they'll make the audience laugh, you'll build the connection, you know. Google, almost like if I have to write stuff, I'm like, oh, writing more than the title, what is this?
Yeah. No, I can see it. I can see it. Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Please keep in touch. Guys, let us know your feedback and anything you want us to pass on. And Steph, Sehaam, I'll catch up with you both shortly.
Yeah, brilliant.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.